Do, 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 do.
Obviously, this is a big game for us because we know they're the top team in the conference right now. Everybody else is trying to chase them. I think they're like 7-1 in the Big Ten. So having them come to our place is a great opportunity for us to really make some noise, not only in the conference but nationally. So we're definitely going to try to get up for this game and try to execute everything the coach says. I know they're going to have a good game plan for us coming in, and so it's just a matter of us executing the game plan and really just playing and being the toughest, nastiest team out there.
Sounds good to me. That's Hunter Dickinson, the big man from Michigan. Thanks to mgoblue.com for the audio. Yeah, 19-1. And the current number one team in the country, the Purdue Boilermakers, come into the Chrysler Center tonight. And everybody's on pins and needles ready for this one. Anytime you get a team coming in like the Boilers and an opportunity like this for Michigan, has everybody fired up. Yeah, I don't know how, fired up Ann Arbor is about it. If Michigan, like this is the kind of game like what Hunter's talking about, Michigan can go out there. People are going to look at it and say, oh, look at this. Michigan has played a lot of games this year against quality opponents close, and then hadn't been able to get over the hump and beat them. And tonight, with Jet Howard's status being up in the air, doubtful that he is going to play against Purdue tonight with that ankle injury he suffered on Sunday against Minnesota. It's going to be even that much more difficult. But as everybody knows that's watching or listening to this right now, Michigan has handled Purdue in recent years in Ann Arbor. And last year, Purdue was a top 10 team, and Michigan wasn't playing all that hot, and the Wolverines popped them. And they didn't just pop them. They smacked them upside the head, ran them off the floor, beat them by double digits, blew them out by 24 points. Now, I don't think that is likely, but being in this game and playing it down to the wire, chance to win it, that's what we're talking about. That's just one of the things that we are talking about. We've got some other things that we'll be hitting on. I think always, I was going to say always, but I'm not sure if it's always. It just feels like always. I've always talked Michigan football as well. This is the yesterday and today were the first times where it wasn't like football and drama and everything. Like it wasn't like top of the page, front and center headline news, something going on with the Michigan football team. And so I've just put a general question out there for you about next year's Michigan squad. And I ask all of you that are watching this live to give me some feedback on it. Your biggest concern for Michigan football in 23, your biggest concern for Michigan next year. It's a fun exercise. Michigan, what they did last year, Michigan, what they did the year before, and the team that they have coming back. Once you start thinking about it, and by now, you're never going to be able to put that TCU loss away and forget about it. But you move on. You're trying to turn the page. Heck, you're almost into February. Wednesday will be February, so we're getting close. Where you're moving on a little bit, but it's a fun exercise thinking about next year and the biggest concerns, because there's not any. There's really no concerns, for Michigan. That's the thing. Now you can always find something, even with the program that is firing on all cylinders like it is, to look even to next year. I mean, even Georgia and Bama, they're sitting around saying, well, this is the concern that we have. There's always concerns, even when you have things going like it is right now. Michigan landed a commitment for not this upcoming season, but the following year, the 2024 class, and he is out of the Buckeye State. So we will get to that coming up, but we'll start with what we have started with at the beginning, and that's sound from Hunter Dickinson, and that's the Michigan basketball team in action tonight. And they got a chance to to, did Hunter say shock the world, show the world, show certainly the college basketball world that they can go out there and that they're not just going to fade into the night, that they want to be into the NCAA tournament. They want to be put themselves into consideration. They want to be able to, when you talk about the Big Ten and Joey brackets and all that, and this would go a long way to saying, hey, we're ready to crash this party, because right now they're not partying. They're on the outside looking in. And that's just where it's at. But a win like tonight, that's how you start getting it going with the Cagers in Ann Arbor. Dooney Dunn asking if Jet is a likely no-go. That is correct. I don't see anything official yet, but he didn't practice yesterday. And we are talking about practice, not the game, but the last game. We all saw him. He went down pretty hard. I hate watching, there's some people that like watching. It's weird to say you like watching injuries, but there's some people that do like them. And, not that I'm overly squeamish, but I don't like seeing ankles getting rolled, maybe because I've had so many ankles rolled myself, but it didn't look good and he didn't put any weight on it and he hasn't practiced. And so I would say that he is doubtful. I would be prepared not to see Jet Howard. If you're a Michigan fan and you're going to the game tonight, like, oh, I can't wait to see Jet Howard. No, okay, well, you might not be able to see him. Jason is the first with the thumbs up. Jason asking if Michigan basketball deserves talk. Yeah, well, look, we're the Maize and Blue Review. This podcast is called Good Afternoon Michigan Football and Basketball. I think so, Jason. I think that they still deserve talk. Do they deserve glowing remarks for the way that they played this year and all out benefit of the doubt, like, oh, this team's gonna rally and get in? You can question that. It was only last year at this time that, and I think last year's team, when I think about Devontae Jones finally rounding into form around this time, it took them a long time, to get out there and now I was going to consider whether this team could be better than last year's team, and I started with Jones at the point and how he played in the second half, and from there, Michigan also lost Eli Brooks from last year's team, so not having Brooks and Devontae Jones and what Michigan has with their freshmen this year, as much as I like Jet Howard and how what I've seen from Doug McDaniel and we, you can start going down the list a little bit. The Big Hoss, I like what I've seen from the Big Hoss, Tarris Reed Jr. But no, last year's team was a better team, and last year's team, you didn't know until the last the weekend of the year when they went down and beat Ohio State that team was going to get in. And so, this year's team really has it. They're up against it when you're talking about the tournament, even though there's a long ways to go, and nothing like a couple wins to turn that around. Like, yeah, right now, if somebody says, do you think Michigan's going to make the tournament? Like, well, they're not right now. Not right now. They're not in it. So they're going to have to win some ball games to see that. I would put them under 50%. If, I had to put a percentage on it, I would say it's, something like 40%, if that, but nothing like some dubs to get that and get everybody back in there and ready to go. Michigan's getting 4.5 points tonight, and it's a late one. How could Michigan win this one? You think about the recipe and of an upset. They're playing at home. That's a big thing. You watch enough college basketball. I was watching Minnesota. Minnesota had a great chance to beat Indiana last night. It's not like Indiana's the number one team in the country or anything, but they're, it's Indiana. And it was Minnesota is the worst team in the conference, team that Michigan beat back on Sunday. But, there was Minnesota at home with a great chance to win that game and make those plays. Had wide open shots, weren't able to hit them. But Michigan, it's not just last year. They've won, I think it's been since 2017. I was looking through it a little bit. I didn't write it down. So, don't take it 100% to the bank. Michigan's had success against Purdue in Ann Arbor over the last few years. And last year, especially when they were out there and they shot 57% from downtown and they almost, didn't miss from the free throw line. That's how you win. And then have the Boilers play some defense, go cold, where Purdue only shot 22% last year in Ann Arbor from downtown. There's your recipe. You want the recipe, you want to know what it is. There it is for the upset. We've got some football feedback. Let's see if we have any more basketball in here for the folks. And Jason is saying, through the expectations, we're a lot higher this year. And in my opinion, Michigan has badly underproduced. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you there. I think that, with Michigan, I think the good thing when you talk about Michigan basketball is that what John Beilein was able to do, and then Juwan Howard picking up the baton and what he did in his first 3 years. The first year there was COVID, but Michigan would have made the tournament that year. And then they had the run to the Elite Eight with a chance to make the Final Four where they won the Big Ten. That was a great year for Michigan. And then last year, a disappointing overall regular season, but they did get into the tournament. That's the expectation. That's the bar. And then they won 2 games and they made it, it was a good year overall for Michigan. Basketball is weird that way. You can go the entire year like last year. People were saying the same kind of things like, I don't know, this team, Caleb Houston, like all the way through. They get that key win against Ohio State. They get in there and they beat Colorado State and then they beat Tennessee and everybody was back. And, it was an exciting season. But yeah, the bar for this year's team is to get into the tournament. And if they don't, what does that mean? Well, it's been a disappointing season. And they don't make the tournament. There's really no other way to say it. It's been really disappointing. I don't think that they should fire the head coach, but, is he going to get some criticism? Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he'll deserve it. And the team will deserve it. And that's the way it goes when you want to play big time basketball at a big time university and the expectations are to make the tournament. Basketball is that way, when and that's the way Michigan basketball. It's good. I'm glad that they're in a position where the expectation for the fans are to make the tournament. So we'll see how that goes. AJ saying he said a bunch of typos. Sorry, he's driving in Columbus. Don't drive. You got some talk to text. What are you doing down there in Columbus? Jason asking if Howard is overrated. Well, I guess it depends where you're rating him. I think Juwan Howard's a good basketball coach. I think that if they don't make the tournament, he deserves to be criticized. And then next year, going to be a critical year for him. Not saying that if they didn't make it this year, then next year he would automatically be on the way out because there's always, mitigating factors, injuries, and just how close it would be, those sort of things. But I tell you what, if we're talking about, and we are talking about it, don't make it this year and don't make it next year. I couldn't 100% say that, that at that point that you might be looking to make a move. That's, again, how it goes in the big time, whether you like it or not. What we have seen from Ward Manuel is has been extremely patient. Look at how patient he was with Jim Harbaugh. We talked about that yesterday. So if he was that patient with Jim Harbaugh, I think, thinking about next year, not knowing exactly how it would go, but we're just talking about not making the tournament. I think that, Ward showing the patience as he has with the football coach. I think he could extend that over on the basketball side, but that's not a fun conversation to have. They're not going to make the tournament this year. They're not going to make the tournament next year. Let's fire the coach. That's a long ways off. But, hey, you asked the question. The punters is talking some hoops. How about that? There we go. Michigan will really help their chances if they can hit their threes. I also think Reed can make a real impact. I think Reed is going to have to make a real impact tonight. The headliner is Purdue has got this giant at 7'4", Zach Edey. And Edey, whose nickname is the Glacier, they throw it into the Glacier, Purdue does, and he'll hold the ball for what seems like an eternity, hence the nickname. But they'll throw it into him, and he just freezes it out. And then he slowly moves and throws this hook shot and drains it. He gets it, and then I won't draw it out as long as I did the last one, but then he's in there dunking it. And the Glacier is playing, it has improved from last year. And at 7'4", and Dickinson at 7'1", that's a nice matchup. But Reed and Michigan needs, and we can think about Jet Howard not playing in this game. Everybody else around, he is Michigan's best perimeter player, best perimeter scorer so far. All of those guys that are shooting threes, they're going to have to make more. And, they're not going to have Jet out there to rely on. And those guys that have been coming off the bench, the Joey Buckets, Joey Baker, and Will Cheddar, one of those guys are going to be in the starting lineup unless they want to go with a big lineup in Reed. I would think myself, if I had to bet right now, that Cheddar would get the start if Jet's not ready to go. And then it's Will Cheddar time. Oh, Will Cheddar, you get in there. It's not like he has to be Jet and, start jacking shots up, but he's going to need to score. And yeah, that's part of the recipe. It's an easy thing, but look, basketball's a pretty simple game. You throw it up, you make it, you don't. Michigan's got to make a lot of threes tonight, and they got to shoot well from downtown. I say, if you're an underdog, how do you, slay the dragon? You shoot well. You shoot from downtown. The three-pointer is the big equalizer, and you're at home. And that's how you stay in games. That's how you win games. It's pretty easy. It almost sounds cliche when you start talking about, well, what's going to be the big key? How about making you threes from downtown? Okay, what else? So I'm with you, punters. They're definitely going to have to knock them down from outside. That's what's going to have to go on. Let's do it with basketball. I'll give you a little bit more. Dooney Dunn is saying Reed has to practice his free throws. He's 7 of 32 this year from the charity stripe. That's inexcusable. I think I could compete with that. Look, below 23%. I could close my eyes and I think I could shoot 23% from the free throw line right now. So yeah, it's terrible, but hopefully he can start moving the other way, away from 23%, away from this terrible percentage. The only way to do that is walk up there and knock them down. That's what you need to see from Tarris Reed. And I wasn't going to bring up the free throws, but there's not much you can do. Your free throw percentage is your free throw percentage, and he needs to get up there and be able to do it. He hasn't gotten a situation where it's been like a hack-a-shack or a tackle terrace type situation. You don't want to get into a tackle terrace type situation. That could be bad. Andre's talking about the free throws as well. It does stand out for sure. Dooney Dunn saying he looks incredibly awkward. I don't know. I remember the first time I saw a picture of Tarris Reed. I don't know if I had watched any film from him in high school, but I saw a picture of him. And it was with before Yo-Yo committed to Michigan, Yusuf Kayat, who's been out with an ankle injury. So I don't know if he'll be shorthanded, although he hasn't given much and you wouldn't expect much from him anyways. But the point was, I saw a picture of the other 4 freshmen, and so there you go, and you look and you say, well, Duck McDaniel, he's he looks like he's about 13. That stood out. And then Reed looked like his hands were like enormous. Like if he put his hand up to mine, like my hand would, like, I don't even know if it would come up to his fingers. That's how big his hand. And so it can be a little difficult when you got mitts like that, to shoot the free throws. You think about Shaq, throwing them up there and whatnot. But his actually the form doesn't look all that bad. Problem is that if you look, I'll take it from the Mason Blue Review poster who I was talking about with Reed Jr., and he had indicated that Reed in high school was 70%. So if that's the case, I would, I don't know that 100%. That's what somebody claimed. I didn't have any reason to not believe that. This can be a mental thing. Ben Wallace is statistically the worst free throw shooter in NBA history. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was the centerpiece of the Go to Work Pistons. I used to go to a lot of Piston practices when I worked in Detroit. You'd go for the first 25 minutes of the practice, and then they, bring some guys over to talk with you. Well, they're not doing a lot of scrimmaging or whatever else, but they do a lot of shooting. And you'd see Ben Wallace out there, and you know what? You'd watch Ben Wallace at the free throw line, and I bet that he made 90%, I don't know, about 80% of his free throws in practice. You just watch him out there. It's like, man, he's knocking them down left and right. Bam, 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 bam. But then he would get into the game and he couldn't make it. So, a mental aspect of it. Oh, let's see. You always go back, and I don't know if any player in college would do it. It's embarrassing. People would be laughing at him. Even suggesting it sounds a little laughable, but there was a player in the NBA named Rick Barry who used the granny shot. Like, the granny shot. I was going to look for my basketball. Where's my basketball? You take it, that the granny shot is, you're throwing it underhanded. But, Rick Barry was a great free throw shooter. And Wilt Chamberlain, the big stilt, when he scored 100 points in one game, if you research a little bit in that game, Wilt, who wasn't a very good free throw shooter, that night he was pretty good. I don't know what it was, 27 of 33 or something like that from the stripe. Off the top of my head, that's what I would guess. But did you know that Wilt Chamberlain shot the granny shot the night that he scored 100? Were you in the joint the night Wilt scored 100 points? That's a Curtis Blow song. If you're a basketball fan, you'd be familiar with that, right? So, yeah, the granny shot. Antoine weighing in on basketball. I hate watching it. Everybody shoots threes like there's no other type of shot. Not a basketball guy, huh? Richard thinking about the underhanded shot. He doesn't show up all the time, but when he shows up, it's always important. That's Detroit sports talk. This team lacks talent. Hopefully they can get the win tonight. Andre says college hoops has been so disappointing this year that I find myself watching the NBA. Wow, what an indictment, Andres. BB, what's that, basketball? BB is like 23. It's a joke. Yeah, I'm not, I don't know about the other part that you had in there about it. But they obviously, if they play like they did last year, they'll have a real good opportunity to win it. You have a couple guys that I have put down that are going to have to. They've been Terrence Williams II, very inconsistent this year. You can't have that from TW2. Will Cheddar likely getting into that starting lineup. He's going to have to step up and provide a lot of minutes and scoring. And Joey Buckets, unfortunately, coming off his worst game of the year, where he blew a wide open layup. He also airballed a three. Doesn't mean that he can't step up and knock down 5 of 6 from downtown. They're going to need something like that. The big piece will be the center matchup, Hunter Dickinson versus the Glacier Zach Edey. Last year, the Glacier just had 10 points. Dickinson had 22 and 9. So that would be something to look for. People talking about basketball just overall this year. I was looking at the top 25. Michigan's not in the top 25. Look at these other teams that aren't in the top 25 either. How about this list? Duke, Indiana, North Carolina, Michigan State, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Kentucky, Louisville, Syracuse, Georgetown, Butler, Villanova. When's the last time all of those teams weren't in the top 25 in college basketball? Duke, Carolina, Kentucky. How about just those three? It's pretty startling when you look at it. Kind of amazing, actually. No, doesn't mean all those teams aren't going to make the tournament. They're just not in the top 25 right now. So that's what's going on when it comes down to it. We'll look at a few more about basketball. Before we get to the question of the day, it's about football. And what's your biggest concern about next year's Michigan football team? The D says college basketball would be far more enjoyable if Michigan had Purdue's record. Yeah, look, you're so right. For years, after the Fab Five and after the tractor trailer and after those years, Michigan went into de facto Ed Martin probation. And it was terrible. Nobody cared about the team. They were the worst team in the Big Ten. Brian Ellerby was the head coach, and the basketball team. It was like you'd go down to then the Chrysler Arena. It was dark. It was drab. It was nicknamed the Mausoleum. The seats it looked like they were still there from the 70s. And you could hear a pin drop during the game. It was pretty bad. And then Tommy Amaker built the bridge or bridged the gap to John Beeline, and then Beeline pulled everybody, like people that were like, I don't care about basketball, kind of thing, like Antoine was saying, basketball, schmasketball. It's a football. It's a football university. Nobody cares about basketball. It's just something to get you through until football season. I've heard all of that. But then Beeline was like, resurrected it and had everybody interested. Everybody loves a winner. That's the way to say it. And people, it spawned a bunch of Michigan basketball fans where people genuinely like the basketball team. And it just so happened that when the basketball team was enjoying some of their success, the football team, unfortunately, was not. And you had basketball, actually. There were people like, hey, basketball. I always looked at it like this. The interest in sports in Michigan, to me, is equivalent to the seating capacity in all of the stadiums. Like, I love baseball and softball and Michigan hockey. They don't seat a whole lot. What's the Chrysler Center seat? Is it even 12,000? 7? Not a lot compared to football that has 111,000. That's where the general interest is when you think about the seating capacity. Although basketball, when you look at the amount of money that it generates and the contract that you could, if you have a successful basketball program, you could talk about it being more than what the attendance is. And it's all, relative. I used to play, I tried to play every angle, would you take the basketball team making the Final Four 4 straight years or 1 Big Ten championship? Everybody, Big Ten championship for football. Would you take 10 Final Fours in a row or 1 5-star recruit at quarterback? And the fans that pick quarterback, like, there were very few Are you kidding me? 10 straight Final Fours or a 5-star quarterback? Sign me up. Give me J.Davis. People are crazed about, and they just love. It's the sport. Like people try to rank their sports. Yeah, like football is king. People love football, and people love Michigan football. So I've always said, hey, look, you can have both. There's nothing wrong with, with having both. Here's Detroit, DTWA, Sports Talk. Just looking at them, I don't think their offense is suited for their players. I love Dickinson, but he might be addition by subtraction. What's up with their recruiting? Well, their offense was fine 2 years ago when they had Hunter Dickinson and he had Mike Smith and he had Shawnee Brown coming off the bench and he had Franz Wagner and he had Livers and he had Austin. You could throw it out. Those guys were hitting threes. That team almost made the Final Four. The offense was fine then. Last year the offense bogged down because they had Caleb Houston. They'd throw it out to him. The 5-star, top 10 player in the country. He was shooting and you'd watch him shoot. You're like, man, that guy's got a hell of a shot. Couldn't make a shot. Never made a shot. Not in a big game. Not in an important game. Caleb Houston, how many points did he even score against Tennessee, Michigan's biggest game of the year? 0. How many did they score that game that I was talking about at Ohio State when they needed him most? 0. Maybe he scored 2. And that's why the offense bogged down. This year, nobody could shoot. Jet sometimes. That's why they don't look good. They can't shoot. Dickinson's an excellent college basketball player. Any team would want Hunter Dickinson on his team, but you do get, if I'm coaching, I'm no Matt Painter, but if I'm thinking about the game plan and I got a call and they'd say, how do you defend Michigan? Just run guys at Hunter Dickinson. When he gets in the post, double him, triple him. Make them beat you from outside. Let anybody shoot. Not Jet. But let anybody else shoot. And that's what's going on with this team. And what's going on with recruiting is that they're pretty locked up. I mean, they got 2 guys coming in next year. They got a guy, you love it when they call him Big Papa. They're bringing in the Papa from a 6'10" pivot player from Connecticut, Papa Conte. He's committed. He's not shooting any threes. He reminded me a little bit, and I did watch some film of the Papa. He reminded me a little bit of Beef Stew from the Pistons. That kind of game. Without the outside game, I didn't see Papa shooting any threes. And then they got who chopped down the cherry tree? Was it an apple tree or cherry tree? George Washington chopped down the cherry tree. George Washington out of Ohio, another 4-star. He's 6'2". Okay, he could shoot some threes. He's out of Dayton, Ohio. So that's what's going on with recruiting. They got both of those guys. And then they got a player smaller right now than Doug McDaniel for the following year. He's listed at 5'8" right now, but he was only a sophomore. What is he? He's a freshman. Now I think he's a sophomore. Christian Anderson out of Georgia. So that's where they're sitting right now when you're talking about recruiting basketball-wise. Richard doesn't know who Wilt Chamberlain is. Oh, yes, he does, because he's talking about Wilt's other record, according to him. That's with how many women he was with. And, people, whatever, I don't know, he said like 10,000. And people are trying to that means every week he would have slept with I don't know, was it 100 women a week or something? When you do the math or just figuring it out, you're like, is that even possible? I mean, you'd like to give it a go for a couple of weeks, but it was overall, it was quite a record by Wilt when you really start thinking about it. Robert says the Maize and Blue will beat Purdue this evening. There you go. See, there you go, Robert. That's what we were looking for. That's what I was hoping for. people getting in and talking about little college hoop, and Robert is predicting the victory. Yeah, Louisville's 2-18. What about Georgetown? Like some of these teams from that are blue bloods just not being able to, get it done. People do miss John Beeline. You have to remember this about John Beeline, though. When John Beeline came in and he went to the championship game, he didn't just keep going to the tournament every year. In fact, he made, after the championship game, the first one against Louisville, he didn't make the tournament. And then he barely made it. He was like one of the Michigan had to play in the play-in game, which I don't even count as making the tournament. So I would say 2 of those times after making the championship game. I'm not making any excuses or anything else for Juwan. I'm just pointing that out. I like the John Beeline era as well. Scott indicating that Michigan has at least 2 first-round draft choices on our roster. Jet Howard this year, Kobe Buffkin next year, maybe Tarris Reed Jr. down the line. Well, as much as I like Kobe Buffkin, and he has really elevated his game this year, and he looks fabulous, I don't think, maybe that would be great, Scott, but I don't think that Kobe Buffkin is going to be a first-round pick next year. I would like to actually be wrong about that one, way wrong, but I don't see that. Now, if he makes the kind of jump that he did from freshman year to sophomore year, from sophomore year to junior, okay. And maybe I'll look back and say, Scott was talking about Buffkin being that guy. But I doubt that. But Jet, for sure. Now I was watching, was it last night? Eastern Michigan hoops, and Amani Bates, who took like 45 shots and scored like 29 points. I think it was the night before. And then I saw a montage of like every shot that he took, and like he's shooting like it was wild, the kind of shots. I mean, he was shooting them from Steph Curry range, and I don't have the box score in front of me, but if you just looked at the highlights, where I even forgot how many points he had, but I think it was like 39. And you're like, wow, Michigan could really use Amani Bates. And Jet Howard and Amani Bates, man, they have very similar type games, like offensive games. But I think Jet Howard is still a better player than Amani. Although, like if Jet was with Eastern Michigan, he could shoot 40 times a game, and you could put up the kind of numbers that Bates has. I think a Jet is, from what I've seen with Jet's passing ability and just more physically ready. I haven't seen much from Amani. He looks like he has the same game that he did when he was in high school. So there it is. We got some basketball talk going. I'm with it. Let's take the turn. I want to tell you folks about a couple things though before we get to that football question. And that football question is your biggest concern for next year for Michigan. Biggest concern here on this January the 25th for the Michigan football team next year. A reminder tonight, it's a 9:00 tip, Michigan and Purdue. After every Michigan basketball game on this feed that you are watching or listening to right now, I will be here talking about the game. Michigan basketball postgame live tonight after the game. You might know there's a big junior weekend for the Michigan football team, bringing in juniors, recruiting. We're going to get to Michigan has landed another commitment. We're getting to that straight ahead as well. You want to know about, I saw a new name in the mix with Michigan as their vacancy at quarterback coach. Trevor McHugh put a name up today. You want to be in tune with all of that? Know who's coming, who's going, recruiting, and everything else? Join the Maize and Blue Review. Go to michigan.rivals.com. We'll see you over there. A lot of fun. It's like this show, except a posting board, the Den, and it's just nonstop Michigan talk like that all day and all night. So check that out. Go to michigan.rivals.com and we'll see you over there. It's a must-have for every Michigan fan. All right, here's the question. Your biggest concern with Michigan football in 23. When you're talking about depth, I'm concerned about the depth. You know you're doing pretty good. I mentioned the posting board, and people were talking about the offense and like, oh, they got to do this and they got to do that. And usually that's what you do every year. You sit around like, oh, they got to really improve here. They got to really improve there. Michigan was great on offense last year. They got the passing game going in the nick of time, but against Ohio State. But in terms of points scored, the ability to run the football the way they did, who's coming back? I mean, getting Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinter and Blake Corum, like, I know that this offense looks like it's in really good hands to me. Like, there's not a lot. So when I looked at the offense, I said, it's got to be, if there's a concern, it's got to be over on the defensive side. Well, they lose Mozzie Smith. He's a pretty important piece right in the middle of the defense there, replacing him. And then DJ Turner, that stands out, the two guys. And, you can say they lost both corners, which is accurate in Jymon Green. But, Will Johnson, like if you could say you could have every cornerback from last year's roster, go ahead and pick one. Who would you pick? Everybody would pick Will Johnson. So, as much as I like Jymon Green and DJ Turner, they've got to replace one of them because Will Johnson is an All-American. Will Johnson's a future first-round pick at corner. Will Johnson is great. We're all in the same, we all agree with that. So it's either going to be corner, it's going to be defensive tackle. I went to the defensive tackle. That's where I went for the biggest concern. And you got Kenneth Grant, you got Rayshon Benny. If you're watching this on YouTube, I went to Kenneth Grant's Twitter page. The first picture that Kenneth Grant has on his Twitter page, at Kenny Grant 78. Kenny G, there's a picture of Kenny G. This is the guy I'm worried about. Like, football players are big to begin with, obviously. This picture of Kenneth Grant is impressive. Like, I don't even know if he could be any more impressive. Like, he looks like he's 100 feet tall. His arms look like tree trunks. Are we all in agreement here that this picture of Kenneth Grant is imposing? This is the guy that I'm worried about. This is my biggest concern. If this is Michigan's biggest concern, this mountain at defensive tackle, then Michigan's going to be just fine. I'm not really concerned. Even though I'm saying it, I'm not. I'm not concerned about Kenneth Grant. And that's just looking at him. If I'm Kenneth Grant or if I'm Michigan, every time I have those buses and everything and I pull up whatever team I'm playing, and you got the bus, I'm having 78 get off the bus, the very first guy. Have him walk out. The other team's going to be looking over there. They see him get off the bus. You see 78 get off the bus. These guys are like, you kidding me? We got to play against this guy? That probably doesn't factor in college. But I do remember we had a guy, he wasn't Kenneth Grant. Back when I played, it was freshman football and and JV football. We had a guy, he wasn't like the greatest player. He started, but he wasn't all that good. But he was a giant. He probably, as a freshman, was like 6'3", 300 pounds. And we always, like when you would stretch before the game, you'd put him like closest to the 50 because you do check out the other team when you're freshman. You look over there, you're like, oh, and sometimes you're like, wow, they look really big. That happens. We'd put old Big Glazer over there, and the other teams must have looked over there and been like, oh my God, look at that guy. I'm sure Kenneth Grant, when he played high school, the other teams would look over there and say, Are you kidding me with this guy? Woo! Man. I'm not worried about defensive tackle anymore. And he's fired up. Kenneth Grant. Okay. Let's get to the feedback about biggest concerns when it comes down to Michigan football for next year. Fred says, this Dennis dude, he never played. What Dennis dude? This Dennis dude? Or are you talking about Grant? Sometimes this is what happens when I work backwards. Let me get all the way, because maybe you were making a joke. Let me get back and start it out, probably at the beginning, because people talk about football from the beginning. So let's do that. Give me 1 second to rack it all up. We've got, 500 comments, and let's just get to football and your biggest concern. Dooney Dunn says, I'm glad that Minter will be back for the 23 season. With him, I'm confident in the defense. Dooney Dunn's biggest concern would be if Michigan lost their defensive coordinator, but they have not. AJ's biggest concern is he has no concerns. Like I said before the end of the year, Michigan hasn't lost too much of anything. When you look at college football, U of M is not facing too many great quarterbacks, making it easier. No concerns from Antoine. Hadley, superstar Hadley, he's got a concern. It's for it's playing 4 quarters a game, no more of the second half stuff. Also, they have to improve on scoring in the red zone, especially TDs. All right, Hadley, because Michigan was great in the second half, no doubt, but how many of the games? You get to Maryland, it was 17-13. Against Iowa, Michigan was up 13-0, but it was 10-10 down at Indiana. That was too close of a shave. Then they dominated in the second half, and Indiana didn't score anything. 16-14 against Penn State. What was the game against Michigan State? 13-7. So your point, Hadley, I think is a good one. Michigan was trailing against Rutgers at the half. They were up 17-3 on Nebraska. It was 7-3, the score against Illinois. What was the score down in Columbus? 20-17, close one. Even into the Big Ten championship game, it was close. What was it? Oh, no, that was Ohio State. The Big Ten championship game, it was close too. 14-13. Hadley, you're right. It's one of the parts when I hate to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about New Year's Eve. It happened. It was 21-6 Frogs at the half. And I was sitting back and I'm like, Michigan's a second half team. I'm not going to worry about them being down 21. Everything that went on, fumbling, I don't have to go over it again. But that's a good one, Hadley. Let's see them, put teams away a little bit quicker. Let's not, have them, whatever they're doing at halftime. Peyton Manning was on the Manning cast. I think it was last week. I wasn't watching it. Or maybe it was the week before. Whatever. He was doing the Manning cast. I think it was the Cowboy game, Cowboy Bucks. And he had said, I got news for everybody out there. There ain't no such thing as halftime adjustments. Everybody always talks about halftime adjustments. There isn't any such thing. And I just saw the quote, and then I saw Michael Lombardi, who does a podcast, and he's a GM in the NFL, and he's like, yeah, right, all you suckers are all, he's basically like, yeah, Peyton let the cat out of the bag. That's all just a bunch of fan talk. And I saw that, and I'm thinking, yeah, well, you guys, I guess, missed the Michigan team. You could say all of that, but there's no doubt that Michigan, whatever, they did something. Was it just having a tuna fish sandwich at halftime, and then they just came out and were like, oh, okay. No, halftime adjustments were real at Michigan. You are right. It's nice, Hadley. Hadley sends a message once a month, and, if they're going to be that good, then okay. I'm all right with it then. All right, let's get to some more what we are asking you as biggest concerns for the Michigan football team. I have to page through them a little bit. You might see I got my finger on the mouse going through some of the basketball ones. So I can just land and start on football. Wait, we get more basketball feedback than I was thinking that we would. Here's Detroit Sports Talk. My concern for the football team is the same as it's been for years. Will they develop their passing game so they are not using it as an emergency, but as a part of the game plan? Bowl ball don't work in the South with Midwest talent. I think there's a little bit, like a little bit to that, but like, yeah, don't just, break it out for the Ohio State game because Michigan was throwing it more than they were running it against Ohio State, and they look great. The thing that I would say, when you're having the success that they've had the last 2 years, yeah, maybe throw it a little bit more, but if you can run it and we know who they have coming back and we know what the offensive line is going to bring, I do, like I feel pretty good about the game plan. I hear you, but I don't know. This is maybe something that we're going to be talking about and discussing all year long. Certainly 2 years ago, I remember 2 years ago, it was Josh Gaddis in the offseason, and somebody, I don't remember, the reporter asked him about, hey, Josh, what's going to be the key coming up this year? And Gaddis broke out with, we're really just going to, try to run the football. And I thought, you couldn't say anything more cliche as a Michigan coach than, we're really going to work on running the football. I mean, I laughed all night long when I heard that. I laughed for a couple of weeks. Oh, is that what Michigan's going to do? They're going to get back to running That's what they did. Josh Gaddis was right. They ran the football. And then last year, all off season, like, yeah, Michigan had great success, but the 1 year, but now with the quarterbacks that they have, both of the running backs who catch the ball into the backfield, look at the receivers, look at the tight end. They're going to be throwing the ball all over the place. No. They were running it. Run. Throw just a little bit, mix it in until the Ohio State game. So am I really going to sit here and say, yeah, they got to start throwing the football more? They've had 2 great years. Run the football. Now, can they beat Georgia? I think is what you're saying. Can they beat Georgia with the philosophy that because they should have beat TCU. They should have beat TCU with their game plan. But maybe they shouldn't have thrown the ball against TCU. Maybe they shouldn't have tried throwing it down on the goal line. Maybe they should have played the way they had played all year long against TCU. But if your argument is are they going to be able to beat Georgia or Alabama by running the ball like they do all year long, getting themselves, they could beat Ohio State. I'm with you. We have to agree with that. They can bludgeon Ohio State by running the ball. Even though they passed to set up the run this year, but the year before it was like that. Yeah, I don't know. We're going to, I think, can you flip a switch against Georgia and Bama? So maybe have to work on some things. Use not just the non-conference and the walkovers that they're going to have, East Carolina, UNLV, and BG, do whatever you want in those games, non-conference. With the rest of the Big Ten, use them as your dummies too. Rutgers, Michigan State, work them over. Work on the passing game with your eyes on the college football playoffs. And when you get in there, springing a passing game on them, I'm talking myself into it a little bit on what your concern is. Here's one from D. I have few concerns about the U of M football offense, aside perhaps from play calling. On defense, he trusts Minner. We're losing a few guys, but he's confident in the coaching. So his concerns, perhaps play calling. Not a lot. Not a lot. Yeah, there's that Georgia feedback. I don't know why Dante Moore's coming up. Dente Moore? I'm not sure. Somebody indicating that the women have a big game tonight as well. Maryland, 2 top teams. All right, go Michigan women basketball. Antoine, this era makes him miss Bobby Knight. OT. OT must like this talk because OT, I say 98% of the time I talk about Michigan. 1% of the time I might talk about something else sports. 1% of the time I might talk about even non-sports. When I do that, 2%, OT gets in and says, get back to talking about Michigan. So he's right where it's at. And OT is indicating that Michigan is the school of Cassie Russell, Glenn Rice, the Fab Five, Trey Burke, and the Beeline years. Yeah, it's the funny thing about the Michigan basketball and treating them like they're a second-class citizen. You go back to Cassie. I would also put the 70s in there and Ricky Green, a team that went to the championship game and lost to Bobby Knight's Indiana Hoosiers the year they went undefeated. Michigan went to the Final Four in the 60s, in the 70s. They won it in the 80s, the Fab Five of the 90s. You keep going. So, yeah, as much as you have all of that, you still like basketball. Let's talk football recruiting. We're going to talk football recruiting coming up in a minute. Here's Jason. We'll give him the big thumbs up. Anytime you put the super, Antoine told me what this was, and I didn't know. This is the super feedback. And Jason M says, 3rd time is a charm. Michigan 2024 national champs. Well, Jason, not only are you getting special attention with a little star on your feedback, you are also going to get a screenshot. There it is. 3rd time is a charm. Michigan. You know what I like the most about that, Jason? Like, I've been doing this kind of stuff a long time. And, you get, like you would say, super fans that, will say things. Like, I'll use the Lions as an example. I've already seen plenty of them this offseason. Lion fans love the offseason. Like, they usually have a really high draft pick, and there's just optimism galore for some reason with the Lions. But I've already seen it this year. Like, they're going to win they're going to win the North. For the first time in 30 years, they're going to win the Super Bowl. You see that the team's going to win 12, 13 games, and so you'd laugh a little bit. It's fun. Like, let's go, yeah. The Lions aren't winning the Super, but there's a reason actually this year from optimism. I'm aboard the optimism train. But for Michigan, this is not crazy talk. This feedback from Jason, who says, 3rd time is a charm, Michigan 2024 national champs. Who says no? Who's laughing at that? Who's even trying to troll that? If we had a bunch of state fans on here or Ohio State fans, they would have to say, yeah, hopefully not. They would say something like, oh yeah, then your coach is going to go to the Jaguars. Something like that. Richard using one of my favorite basketball, he's just throwing random names, but he's talking about basketball and the lineage and the great players and the history of Michigan basketball. And he puts Antoine Joubert's name up. One of my favorites of all time, the Judge. The Judge, my favorite high school player of all time, one of my favorite Michigan players of all time, and the Judge's backcourt mate when he played was my favorite Michigan basketball player of all time. Now, my favorite player of all time is AC. I don't even know if there's a number 2 on there. It's like AC 1 through 5. AC, Anthony Carter, the tearaway number 1 jersey, number one in the program and number one in my heart growing up. But Antoine Joubert's backcourt mate, I think, is number 2 on that list. Otis is talking about Jordan Poole. Left early and wouldn't make it. Nobody thought Jordan Poole. Everybody thought Jordan Poole was making a mistake. Oh, that's where maybe Kobe Buffkin, me talking about, hey, Kobe Buffkin's not a first rounder. Maybe he's going to be like Jordan Poole. You got me there. Ooh, Fred. The host needs to lose 100 pounds. Who's the host? He's talking about me. Well, Fred, not that I'm talking about my personal life too much, but I'm working on it, Fred. I've had a good month. I'm on the right track to a healthy lifestyle, Fred. So it takes a minute. Check back in June, Fred. We'll see. You might be coming on here like, whoa, look at the host. Oh, Fred, this is now Fred. This was kind of mean, but true. But this was a little bit over the top on there. Fat jokes from Fred. Ooh, I like the people getting my back. Ooh, there's another one. You're getting run off, Fred. It happens. Now Fred wants to start talking about, Fred, like the insults we get, but just now throwing up Michigan's name. I don't know what's wrong with you. Oh, he's a Buckeye fan. I feel like I can take OU. Okay. Jason talking about recruiting. We can go on all day. Davis is a lock for Michigan. It's Harbor that I'm worried about. Wait, J.Davis is a lock? Yeah, I don't feel like that. I would like, Jason, I hope you know what you're talking about. I hope that J.Davis is a lock. That'd be really nice. I haven't given up hope. I feel like Michigan, like if we're talking about their as a leader, I would say that J.Davis, I follow it. I say as close as everyone, but people follow it pretty close. But I don't feel like he's a lock. I feel like Michigan's the leader. Harbor? I don't know. Like, Harbor's going to be tough, but Michigan can do it. I'll tell you what, if Michigan gets Harbor and Davis, this podcast is going to be off the charts. Jason talking about Oregon's going after him. Oregon and track and field. That's going to be tough. OT agrees with the talk of Buffkin. George Washington will come in and he will never tell a lie. I'm ready for all of those jokes, and it's just fun. Here's one of my favorite feedback. People that get in, contributors. One of my favorite feedback contributors. It is Shane. Harbor is taking the bag. Please, J.Davis, don't take the bag. Well, you can get the bag. Just come to Michigan. You just don't get it immediately. But aren't they working, Shane? This is the thing when it comes to the name, image, and likeness. Like, Michigan's working on the bag. Like, they got this gigantic bag, and they're showing everybody the bag. They're just saying, look, we promise you that you can get into the bag, but we can't promise you. Where the way the other teams are doing it is like, here's a bag. Come to school here, and we promise you what's in this bag. Let's go over it again. Other schools. Here's the bag. Come to school here, you can have it. Michigan stance. Look at this big bag. You can get into it once you come here. We just can't promise it to you. That's not that different. Michigan has a bag, and it is available for players. Now, how do they say the bag is So guys like Harbor, the 5 stars, and J.Davis, the 5 stars, how do they relay that, yeah, you deserve more of the bag once you get here because of what you did in high school? I think that needs to be reconciled, however they do it. And how do they put that together? I can't promise it, but look, can they say, let's see if this sounds illegal. You're one of the top players in the country. We can't promise you, because you're one of the top players in the country or anybody else, we can't give you anything to come here. But if you go to Michigan and you're one of the top players in the country, we have a bag available for you. How much? See, there's just they get a little fine tuning that needs to be done there, Shane, about the bag. These guys deserve the bag. Every team is giving the bag away, and you can't enforce the bag. Michigan doesn't want to do it because it's breaking the rule. Michigan breaks the rules the little small ones that can be tracked, and everybody else is breaking the big rules that can't be tracked. I have a hard time with that, as people know that watch this. We don't give away money to recruits because that's technically against the rules, and it's bad form. But we turn ourselves in for breaking these small rules that are going to give us a level 1 violation. Here's Fat Freddy is in the feedback talking about $1.99. I don't know what's going on with Fred. Hey, Fred, bring it on. His shot is weird. Crossface. I think he's talking about Buffkin. Antoine says Michigan fans are just making up problems. Michigan's got more players returning than anybody, but of course they don't keep up with nothing. Yeah, Antoine, I don't think anybody's buying the, Michigan's in a bad spot football-wise. Like, you could take some shots at the head coach. He probably deserves some of that, Hey, what about not saying you're going to, we've been down that road. But as far as the football team and the prospects for next year, what they have done the last 2 years, tremendous. Make fun of it all you want. I've heard people try. I don't care. I look at it like the fat jokes from Fred. All right. And then what's Fred going to say about this upcoming year? You guys aren't going to be very good this year. Okay, Fred. If that's what you think. Nobody wants to work for that money. Well, I don't know, Richard, if you had a kid and he was a 5-star and people were like, here's $5 million, even before you come in and play. Take it. We'll arrange it. You'd be like, well, what about this dude from Florida who was supposed to get 12 and now Rashada, he's not getting it. I would say let's do some homework on that. Let's get that $5 million and let's go from there. I get that. I get this too. I really want Harbor as well. I want Nichols Harbor. Fred, how many fat jokes are you going to go to, Fred? Michigan doesn't have depth problems. I don't think so either. I mean, they've lost a player or two. We're talking about the depth. Now Fred thinks that Kenny G. Okay. Now Fred's putting nutball things on there. Here's Matt. He's got a concern. My football concern next year is JJ, Blake, and Donovan Edwards will all be gone. No, you're talking about, so next year I'm thinking is 23. You're talking about 24, which I guess you could say would be next year. At some point I do have to I was waiting till spring ball till I make the transition to talk about this year. This year, I still feel like was last year, and you're talking about 24. Well, are we 100% sure that JJ is gone? I'm not 100% sure about that. But there is that possibility. It means he's had a great year. All right, we've talked a little bit about recruiting. Let's talk a little bit more about it. Michigan landed a recruit yesterday for 24. That's not this next class, that's the following class. And it comes from the Buckeye State, Ted Hamilton. Teddy Hammond. Sorry, Hamilton. We try that again. From the Buckeye State, Ted Hammond. Teddy Hammond. 6'5", 265, a defensive end out of St. Xavier in Cincinnati. 4-star. What's not to like here? Nothing. I like everything about this commitment. He is highly rated. He plays in a hotbed down there in Cincinnati. I like the measurables at 6'5", 265. And if anybody follows Michigan football, you get a highly rated player from the state of Ohio, you like it. There's only two things I like out of the state of Ohio: football players and Cedar Point. I like Hammond. In the history of Michigan football, when Michigan is doing well, they're polling players from Ohio. Getting players from Ohio is a big deal. Getting highly rated players from Ohio is a big deal. Getting Ted Hammond is a big deal. This is a big deal for Michigan, being able to pull this guy in. Nice job by Michigan being able to get Teddy Hamilton. Now, when you just look not at this upcoming recruiting class, but the following year, that is 2024, you see a pattern in what Michigan is doing. Here's the pattern. Ted Hamilton, who we're talking about right now from Cincinnati, 4-star defensive end. Michigan earlier got a tight end out of Bellevue, Washington, Hogan Hansen. 4-star. Luke Hamilton, offensive lineman out of Ohio. 4-star. Manuel Begiel out of Germany, not rated. You get those national players, international players, tough to get ratings on them. Mason Curtis, the first commitment of this class, a linebacker out of Tennessee, 4-star. So here we go. 4-star, 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 4-star. Michigan is off and running in the 2024 class, even though they didn't do great, number 17. In this year's recruiting class, they were able to supplement this year's class with an excellent work in the transfer portal, getting guys like Josiah Stewart, Ernest Hausman, Drake Nugent on the offensive side of the ball. Who else? The kid Ladarius Henderson, a offensive lineman who can play either guard, either swing tackle. Miles Hinton, the former 5-star. I mean, like, they lit up the transfer portal. They still might not be done. I know we talked about the possibility of them, or we just talked about in theory. Actually saw somebody indicating that Michigan is in on some corner in the transfer portal from Ole Miss. Transfer portal's closed right now. I don't know. So we'll see if anything develops there. But they've done great in supplementing the class. And then next year's class looks fabulous. And this might be the way they have to do it. If the guys that are going to be 5-stars are going to take the immediate cash, this is the way Michigan may have to go about it. And it might work. It's working so far. You know what I mean? So that's where that is at. Let's read some more of the feedback. Here's just Fred talking about me. Here's what I'll guarantee you, Fred, right now. I don't know what kind of athlete you are. I don't even know what kind of. I can make a guess at what kind of human you are, but let's just say that you're like not a bad person, which seems could be a stretch, considering that I've never seen you before. You're just coming in, name calling, not the greatest first impression, Fred. I'll guarantee you this, Fred. Anytime, any day, anything that you want to do athletically, I'll take you. Basketball is my favorite sport. You'd have no chance. I don't know how tall. I don't know what kind of shape you're in. I'll whoop you out on the basketball floor, Fred. No question. Now, I don't know what else you want to do. Bar games, little darts, little pool. I don't know how athletic you might think that is. You got no chance there either. I don't know what we're going to do football-wise. I could throw the football. I could knock you backwards with a forearm. A little Oklahoma drill. Might be a little bit old for that. Like wrestling or Oklahoma drill. I'm not so sure about that. But basketball, you're done. What else do you want to do? I don't know. You don't want to play hockey or something? A test of athleticism? What do you do, Fred? Your choice. What are you good at? Soccer? You might have me there. Without ever meeting you, Fred, I am going to give it to you, breaking it down. You're a better soccer player than I am, Fred. That's what you got. That's what you're good at. You're good at soccer. Okay. Harbor is 6'5" and runs a 4.3 40 faster. You can't pass that up. Yeah, I saw his 60-meter time was pretty impressive. There's no doubt about that. I thought about getting some help with the feedback. Somebody could throw it in there and help. I want to get new people. What's up, Bob? Good to see you, man. Let's get a couple more in here. Boy, I'm way behind on the feedback because I was talking about Peyton Manning like a half hour ago. And Fletch is saying that Peyton must have never been down at the half. Yeah. Are adjustments overrated? I mean, are you making an adjustment on every series, on every play? I mean, they're looking at cut-ups and tablets and, they're coaching every single play. So, yeah, I mean, being able to do that on the fly. That's what Hadley said earlier. Let's try and do something a little bit different. Fletch asking if Orgy and Denegal, can they get more involved? Also, A.J. Henning, use him. Yeah, I think Henning, I mean, we all thought that he was going to be used like Deebo Samuel this year, and that never happened. Denegal, I think he might get him more involved in another position, and Orgy's in the mix. I mean, I only saw Orgy during the spring. I like what I saw. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll take the last couple in here as, I was thinking today was going to be a short show. It has not happened. Not happened. People taking some shots at Fred. He deserves it. He deserves his shots. Fred's gone. Shane, 23 Natty champs, not 24. The game will be played in 24, I think. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but 23, I think that's a significant I think we all kind of understand that. Here's somebody clarifying it. Jason, there you go. I'm with you, Jason. I think Shane knew what you were talking about as well. Let's do it. Here's another Shane. Or Shane again, coming back. Blank Fred. Dennis determines what he needs to lose. Yeah, there you go, man. I think we're done. I think Fred has hightailed it out of here. Here's some talk on Chase or on Harbor. offense is behind his defense, and you're right. He needs to be an edge, corner, or tight end wide receiver to keep his body. Yeah, look, when it comes down to like I saw this originally, like if people are like Harbor's more, offensive line, or I'm sorry, more defensive end, than he is wide receiver or whatever else. When you run the way he runs, if I was recruiting him, I'd say, you know what, Nichols, you can play anywhere you want. You want to play wide receiver? We'll put you there. You think could be at 6'5", 235? You could be a great tight end. You might be, top 5 tight end. You want to play defense? You want to play both ways? Let's do it. I'd put Nichols Harbor wherever he wants to go. He can play anywhere he wants. I think Michigan's doing that same thing. Golf. Antoine talking a little golf. Yeah, my best round I remember. I'm not the greatest golfer. I like it, everything, but I'm not really that good at all. But when I was playing a lot, the best round that I ever played was against somebody I was working with. He was my boss at the time, and we were in kind of we didn't like each other. And so it was like a grudge match. And he loved golf. And we were out there, and it's the best I ever played. I was out there whoosh, firing them down the middle, which almost never happens, dropping putts. So I think it might be like maybe I need a little something. Maybe I need a little anger when it comes down to golf to bring the best out of me. So that's it. People, I appreciate everybody going after Fred, but I don't think we're going to see anything more from Fred. I think he's done. This was a drive-by. I don't think he's a Michigan fan, but it happens. The more you're on, like, I'm not screening anybody. Anybody can come on and watch the show. I'll read if it's, I didn't know where Fred was coming from. I'll take your calls. I'll take your feedback. Do anything. I've been trying to put this up on Twitter Spaces every day. Some days I forget. Today I did not. I do have some feedback on Spaces. Let's see what it says. Scott, any word on Jet tonight? Yeah, the word is that there's not any word, but let me check. First of all, let me check to see if I have a text, because I asked somebody to text me if it was going on during the show, if I heard anything, and I don't see that text. And I don't see anything over here as well. Got some text from my wife. That's it. Okay. No word tonight, Scott. Nothing yet from you. All right. I do want to say that we will talk basketball tonight. And then I did have a word on National Signing Day that's coming up. That's this Wednesday. And keep an eye out for this guy, 23 defensive lineman Cameron Brandt. He is a Stanford commit, but he did not sign in the early signing period, and he took an official visit to Michigan last week. So this is somebody that I don't put in forecasts. I leave that to the pros. But considering that I did read some of his quotes, it sound pretty flattering towards Michigan. And he was in here last week, and signing day is this Wednesday. That would be a name if you're looking like, hey, they're going to get anybody before Wednesday or on Wednesday. I know we're all talking about Nichols Harbor. I certainly am. Cameron Brandt would be somebody to keep an eye on. He is somebody to keep an eye on. And as far as tomorrow goes, we are going to be talking about the Michigan quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. Oh, this picture. I'm finally getting to the point where I can look back on that final game. JJ, this is such a sad photo for those of you that are not watching, listening to the podcast. It's the photo of McCarthy watching the TCU celebration. And it is one of the saddest photos that you will ever see. But we'll talk about JJ, that game, the Ohio State game, the season. We'll put a poignant question, something like, where can J.J. McCarthy get better? What's his upside? Will he really leave next year? Like was indicated by a key contributor today saying that, JJ's going to be gone. If JJ's gone, that means next year he play. If McCarthy plays, I'm going to give you a little teaser for tomorrow. If McCarthy plays like he did against Ohio State all year long, he may be gone. And it might not be a bad thing for Michigan football. Because if McCarthy plays like he played against Ohio State and feels like he is ready to go, that means Michigan's had another great year. Let's go. Let's do it. We'll talk about that tomorrow. See you tonight after the basketball game or tomorrow here at 1 o'clock. Thanks for watching. Everybody have a great day.